Harry S Truman and the creation of Israel. The point of this series is to show that the return of the Jewish people to their land is ordained by God. It is not something that could have happened by human design. There has always been opposition to the Jews getting their land back, but God has used certain individuals throughout history to make sure it happens. One of those individuals is Harry S Truman, 33rd President of the United States. Truman, who was Vice President, became President when President Roosevelt died on April 12, 1945. He had not wanted to be Vice President, but events put him in that position, and so the presidency itself came to him through a series of occurrences that he had not manipulated. One conviction that he brought with him to the presidency was that the Jewish people deserved the right to self-determination in their ancestral homeland. He believed this to be fundamentally right. In this sense, he was in the same tradition as Winston Churchill and David Lloyd George. President Truman became the first world leader to formally recognize Israel as the nation-state of the Jewish people, which he did only 11 minutes after its birth on May 14, 1948. This was not an easy decision for President Truman. He faced opposition from senior officials in the Department of State and from among his advisors, as well as allies from around the world. The State Department presented Truman with a whole raft of reasons why he should not recognize Israel. Like the Foreign Office in Britain, the State Department were sympathetic to the cause of the Arabs and opposed to the idea of a Jewish national state. They argued that the disputed areas of Palestine should be placed under exclusive Arab control. This would help secure Saudi Arabian oil supplies, please Arab nationalists, and reduce the influence that the Soviet Union had on them. They argued that a Jewish state would inflame Arab nationalism, which would cause the Arabs to turn to the Soviet Union for support, which would cause a domino effect of Arab states falling under Soviet influence. They also came up with a strange argument that the existence of a Jewish state would inflame anti-Semitism in the United States. Such back-to-front reasoning reminds me of the twisted arguments used against the Jews in the Middle Ages. For example, that if a Jew didn't convert to Christianity, he should be persecuted and all his property returned to the king. But if he did convert, all his estate would be seized to prove the sincerity of their conversion. One man who did support the establishment of a Jewish state was White House Special Counsel and self-pronounced Christian Zionist Clark Clifford. The State Department, led by Secretary of State General George Marshall, was doing everything in its power to stop Israel from declaring its independence, even to the point of trying to undo the United Nations partition plan of 1947. Truman himself felt betrayed by the State Department and said in his diary, "This morning I find that the State Department has reversed my Palestine policy. The first I know about it is what I see in the papers. Isn't that hell? I'm now in the position of a liar and a double-crosser. I never felt so in my life." On May 12, 1948, things came to a head when Truman had a meeting with Secretary of State Marshall, Defense Secretary James Vincent Forrestal, and Under Secretary of State Robert Lovett. He urged the President not to recognize a new Jewish state if it were to be declared. Truman was outnumbered. However, Clark Clifford, who was also in the room, argued that a new state committed to democracy would benefit the Middle East. Marshall was red with rage and said he didn't know why Clifford was in the meeting. Truman replied, "Well, General, he's here because I asked him to be." Once again, God had provided the right people in the right place at the right time to make the way for Israel to be restored. Once the United States showed de facto recognition of Israel, other countries followed. Israel is here to stay and has grown economically and technologically nearly every year since its foundation, despite wars and upheavals. It will continue on this path up until the time of the rapture. God will keep all his promises to Israel, but the nation lacks one thing. They have not, as a nation, accepted Jesus as their Messiah. God has hardened their hearts until the full number of Gentiles comes in. Romans chapter 11, verse 25. For I would not, brethren, that ye should be ignorant of this mystery, lest ye should be wise in your own conceits, that blindness in part is happened to Israel, until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in. This is indeed a mystery, but the day will come when Jesus returns, that the Jews will see the marks on his hands and feet, and finally accept him as their Lord. Zechariah chapter 13, verse 6. And one shall say unto him, What are these wounds in thine hands? Then he shall answer, Those with which I was wounded in the house of my friends. Verse 9. And I will bring the third part through the fire, and will refine them as silver is refined, and I will try them as gold is tried. They shall call on my name, and I will hear them. I will say, It is my people, and they shall say, The Lord is my God. So thank you for listening. If you found this video interesting, you can find more information at prophecy-workshop.com.